Ethan sat inside the small pilot seat of his ship, feeling the steady hum of the engines beneath him. His journey had been long, lonely, and filled with silence. The stars stretched endlessly around him, each light a reminder of how far away he was from home. His orders were simple: to explore a region of space no one had dared to travel before. Yet deep in his chest he felt something more, as if his path had been chosen long before he was even born. As the ship drifted forward, a sudden flicker of light appeared on the screen. Ethan leaned closer, frowning as numbers scrolled quickly over the console. Then it happened. The ship shook with a violent force. Alarms screamed, and the hull groaned as if it would tear apart. Outside the window, a storm of brilliant blue and gold energy burst open like fire across the dark. The stars vanished behind the storm, leaving only swirling clouds that twisted and snapped with power. Ethan gripped the controls, struggling to hold the ship steady, but the storm tossed him like a leaf in a river. Sweat ran down his forehead as the ship lurched and spun. The screens went black, then flashed again. Sparks sprayed from the panels, filling the air with the sharp smell of burning wires. He thought he would be lost, swallowed by the storm. But just as suddenly as it came, the storm faded. The silence returned, broken only by the uneven hum of the engines fighting to stay alive. Ethan opened his eyes, not sure if he was still alive. And then he saw it. A massive citadel floated before him in the darkness, shining like a crown of gold. Tall towers rose high, their lights glowing soft and warm, casting a glow across the curve of the nearby planet. The world below shimmered with blue oceans and wide green lands, so bright and alive that it looked like a dream. He stared, unable to believe what he was seeing. This was no ruin or dead husk of stone. This was a home, alive with light and life. His heart beat faster, his breath caught in his throat. He had come here seeking the unknown, but he had never imagined finding people. The citadel was not alien at all, it was human. The shapes of the towers, the bridges, the shining domes, all bore the hand of human craft. It looked different from Earth, older and more graceful, but it was still human. His mind raced with questions. How had they come here? How had they built this place? And why had no one ever spoken of it? As his ship drew closer, the golden towers grew sharper, and he could see smaller ships moving in perfect patterns around the citadel, each one guarding the sky above the planet. They moved with precision, not as strangers, but as protectors of a kingdom. Ethan adjusted the failing controls and sent a signal. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. He introduced himself, stating his name and his origin. There was a pause, a silence that seemed to stretch forever. Then a voice answered, calm and firm, welcoming him. The voice carried no fear, no surprise, but a weight of something deeper, as if they had been waiting for this very moment. Slowly, guided by the smaller ships, Ethan's vessel moved toward the grand gates of the citadel. Light poured from the walls, casting his ship in gold. His heart pounded as he realized what awaited him inside. He had crossed the storm and entered a hidden world. He had not found strangers. He had found a lost part of humanity, and whatever lay beyond those gates would change him forever. Ethan's ship landed gently inside the great hall of the citadel. The floor beneath was smooth and shining like polished stone, glowing faintly with golden light. Guards in silver armor stood in rows along the sides, their spears raised in perfect order. The air was still, filled with the sound of echoing steps as Ethan descended the ramp. He felt every eye watching him, judging him, trying to see if he was a threat or a promise. He walked slowly, his boots striking the floor with steady rhythm. Though his heart raced, he held his head high. He had traveled across darkness and storm, and now he had reached a place that no one from his world had ever known. His eyes swept across the chamber, taking in the banners of deep blue. In gold that hung from the walls, the carvings of men and women in stone, their faces proud and noble. At the far end of the hall stood a throne raised on steps of white marble, and upon the throne sat Queen Alara. She wore a crown of silver, her gown flowing like water, glowing in the light of the hall. Her hair shone dark against her pale face, and her eyes were sharp yet kind, filled with both strength and sorrow. When Ethan entered, the queen rose slowly to her feet, and the hall fell into silence. Ethan stopped at the base of the steps, bowing slightly, unsure of what was expected of him. His lips parted to speak, But before he could form a word, the Queen's eyes met his. Her gaze was steady, searching his face as if she were trying to remember a dream. Then something strange happened. Her lips trembled, her hands tightened on the edge of her gown, and tears began to shine in her eyes. "You have come," she whispered, her voice breaking, though the hall carried her words clearly. The courtiers gasped softly, their whispers filling the air. No one moved, but every gaze shifted between the Queen and the traveler who stood before her. Ethan blinked in surprise. He'd expected questions, suspicion, even anger. But instead he found himself staring at a queen who looked at him as though she had known him all her life. Her tears were not of sorrow, but of something deeper, something that stirred a quiet ache in his chest. She took a slow step forward, her gown trailing behind her, and the guard shifted, but did not stop her. "We have waited," she said again, louder this time. "We have waited for the one who would come from the stars." The hall broke into murmurs, voices rising with wonder and doubt. Words of prophecy and destiny passed between them, and some shook their heads, while others nodded eagerly. Ethan stood still, confused yet unable to move. It was as if her words held him in place, binding him to something greater than himself. Queen Alara stopped just a few steps away from him. She raised her hand, and without thinking, Ethan took it. Her fingers were warm, her touch light, but it carried the weight of history. "Your face," she whispered, "it is the same as the vision I was shown when I was only a child. I was told a man would arrive, carrying hope, and that he would stand before me as you do now." Ethan's mouth was dry. He wanted to speak, to deny it, to question it, but his voice would not come. He saw only the certainty in her eyes, the way her shoulders eased as though a great burden had been lifted. He realized then that she believed, truly believed, that he was part of their destiny. The courtiers grew restless. Some demanded proof. Others argued in hushed tones that this traveler was a danger, a stranger who could not be trusted. But the Queen raised her hand, and the noise fell at once. "This man," she declared, her voice ringing clear, "is not to be harmed. He is to be honored, for he carries with him the promise of our future." The hall trembled with the weight of her words. Ethan felt the eyes of every man and woman upon him, heavy with expectation. His journey had brought him here through storm and silence. And now he stood in a hall where his presence meant more than he could ever understand. Whatever path lay ahead, he knew it had already begun, and the Queen's reaction spoke louder than any command. It was not fear, but hope, and it bound him to this place more tightly than chains ever could. The days after Ethan's arrival were filled with questions and discovery. The Queen had ordered that he be treated as an honored guest, though many in the court still watched him with suspicion. Some feared he might bring danger, while others whispered that he was the one spoken of in the old tales. Ethan felt the weight of their stares every time he walked through the halls, yet he also felt the quiet pull of curiosity from those who dared not speak. One morning, Queen Alara invited him to walk with her through the gardens that surrounded the citadel. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of flowers glowing with soft light. Fountains sang with clear water, and birds with bright wings darted between the trees. Ethan felt peace for the first time in many days. He walked beside the Queen in silence, unsure of what to say, until she spoke. "Our people left Earth long ago," she said softly. "Our ancestors sailed across the stars in search of a new beginning. They carried with them memories, knowledge, and hopes, but they lost the path back. Over time, Earth became a story, a distant place spoken of only in legend." Ethan listened closely, his steps slowing as he tried to imagine the journey she described. Her words stirred something inside him. He thought of the long silence of his own journey, the storm that had nearly ended him, and the sight of the citadel shining like gold. He had believed he was alone, yet here he found people who shared the same blood, the same human spirit. It felt as though he had stepped into a chapter of history left unwritten. As they walked, Alara guided him to a great building at the heart of the gardens. Its doors were tall and carved with patterns of stars. Inside, Ethan saw endless shelves of books and scrolls, glowing crystals that stored knowledge, and maps of worlds beyond imagining. "This is our library," Alara said. "Here we keep all that we have learned. Our ancestors left Earth with hope that their children would build wisely. This is the gift they gave us." Ethan reached out to touch one of the glowing crystals, feeling a warmth through his hand. He realized then that these people had not only survived, but had grown in ways his world had never known. They had built beauty and wisdom, carrying their past with honor. Yet he also felt the distance, the longing for a connection they had lost. As they left the library, voices followed them. Members of the Queen's Council waited in the courtyard, their faces stern. One of the older men stepped forward, his tone sharp. "Your Majesty, with respect, how can we trust this stranger? He comes from beyond the storm. He may carry secrets we cannot see." Others nodded, their voices rising with doubt. "He could be a spy. He could bring war. We cannot place our hopes on a man we do not know." Ethan stood still, letting their words fall. He did not argue, though part of him wished to. He knew that trust could not be demanded, only earned. Queen Alara raised her hand, silencing the council. "I have seen him in vision since I was a child," she said. "I will not cast aside what fate has placed before us. He is not here to bring ruin. He is here to remind us of who we are." The council fell silent, though their eyes still held doubt. Ethan bowed his head slightly, knowing this was only the beginning. He would have to prove himself, not only to the queen who believed in him, but to all those who feared him. That night, standing on the balcony of the chambers given to him, Ethan gazed at the stars above the citadel. He thought of Earth, of the people he had left behind, and of the queen whose eyes had shone with hope when she looked at him. He felt a bond growing between them, fragile yet unbreakable, a bond that tied him not just to her, but to the destiny of her people. And deep inside, he knew that his journey was far from over. The real test was still to come. The calm of the citadel did not last. Only a few days after Ethan's arrival, danger came without warning. Ships unlike any he had seen before appeared at the edge of the sky. Dark and sharp, they moved with hunger, like wolves circling their prey. The bells of the citadel rang out, calling guards and soldiers to their posts. Fear spread quickly through the streets, for everyone knew these raiders came to steal and destroy. Ethan stood on the high balcony of the citadel beside Queen Alara as the warning filled the air. Below them, families rushed to safety while soldiers formed lines, their armor gleaming in the light. The queen's face was calm, but her eyes betrayed the weight of the moment. "They come for what we have built," she said softly. "They come to break us." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had not come here to fight, yet he knew he could not stand aside. He turned to her. "Let me help. I have faced storms that nearly tore me apart. I cannot watch these people fall." Alara studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Then stand with us." He was given armor, plain but strong, and a place among the commanders. Though many doubted him, they could not deny the calm strength in his voice as he studied the field. Ethan's eyes traced the patterns of the enemy's ships, their movements, their weakness, spoke quickly, offering plans that the commanders had not considered. His ideas were simple, yet sharp, and though the council hesitated, Alara raised her hand. "We will follow him." As the raiders descended, the battle began. Arrows lit with fire streaked across the sky, and the roar of engines shook the air. Soldiers clashed in the fields outside the citadel walls, the sound of steel striking steel echoing through the valley. Ethan rode at the front lines, his heart steady, his eyes clear. He called out orders, guiding the soldiers to form tight shields, to push forward where the enemy faltered, to fall back where the danger grew too great. The raiders fought with fury, but Ethan's guidance turned the tide. He led a small group through the chaos, striking at the enemy's center. He fought with courage, his sword flashing in the light, his voice carrying strength to those around him. More than once he placed himself between danger and the men beside him, and they began to look to him not as a stranger, but as a leader. In the midst of the battle, Queen Alara herself rode into the field. Her presence lit the soldiers with fire, her banner raised high. But as she pressed forward, an enemy rider broke through the lines, his blade aimed for her. Ethan saw it in an instant. Without pause, he charged, his body colliding with the rider's, knocking him from his horse. The enemy's blade struck Ethan's shoulder, burning pain across his flesh, but he stood firm, driving the attacker back. Elara turned, her eyes wide as she saw Ethan standing, wounded, yet unbroken. For a moment their gazes locked, and she knew that without him she might have fallen. Strength filled her voice as she rallied her soldiers, her cry rising above the clash. For the Citadel, for our future. The soldiers pressed harder, their spirits lifted. The raiders, once fierce, began to falter under the weight of the defense. One by one their lines broke, and soon they were fleeing back into the sky, leaving only silence and smoke behind. When the field grew quiet, the people of the Citadel gathered. They looked upon Ethan with new eyes, no longer as a stranger, but as one who had stood for them when it mattered most. The council bowed their heads, unable to deny what they had witnessed. He had fought not for glory, but for them, for their queen, for their survival. As the sun set, painting the sky in red and gold, Ethan stood beside Queen Elara once more. His shoulder throbbed with pain, but he did not care. He had found his place in the heart of the storm, not as an outsider, but as one of them. The queen's voice was quiet, yet filled with gratitude. "You've given us more than victory," she said. "You have given us hope." Ethan met her gaze, and though no words passed between them, he knew their bond had grown unshakable. Together they had faced the test of courage, and together they would face whatever came next. The battle was over, yet the echoes of it lingered in the air. Smoke rose from the fields, and the cries of the wounded carried through the Citadel. People moved among the fallen, offering water, tending to wounds, and lifting the weary from the ground. Ethan stood at the gates, his shoulder bound with cloth, watching his life slowly return to the city. Though pain throbbed through his body, he felt no regret. He had given all he could, and for the first time he knew he belonged here. Queen Elara walked among her people, speaking gently to the soldiers, thanking them for their courage. When she came to Ethan, the crowd parted, bowing as she drew near. Her eyes softened when they met his, and she placed her hand lightly on his arm. "Without you, we would not stand here today," she said. "You have given more than you owed." Ethan shook his head. "I owed everything. You welcomed me when I was nothing but a stranger. You trusted me when others doubted. I could not have done otherwise." Her lips curved into a faint smile, but her gaze carried something deeper. She turned to the people gathered around them and lifted her voice so all could hear. "Hear me now," she declared. "This man is not a stranger. He is one of us. He came from the stars, yet he fought with us as brother and friend. His courage has proven that he was sent not to harm, but to guide." Cheers rose from the crowd, the sound rolling through the streets. Men and women raised their hands, voices calling Ethan's name. He stood humbled, the weight of their hope pressing upon him, yet he did not shrink from it. Instead, he raised his hand not in pride but in promise. That evening, a great gathering was held in the hall of the Citadel. Candles burned bright, and music filled the air. Long tables stretched across the chamber, set with food and wine, but more than feasting, it was a night of unity. People spoke of the battle, of bravery, and of the future that now seemed possible. Ethan sat beside Queen Elara at the high table, feeling the warmth of her presence, yet also the seriousness of what was to come. When the music faded, Elara rose, and the hall fell silent. She looked across her people, her face shining in the candlelight. "Our world has long lived in the shadow of fear," she said. "We have waited for a sign that we are not alone, that our kin still live beyond the stars. That sign has come. Ethan is proof that we are part of something greater. We will no longer hide in the silence of the void. We will seek reunion with the world we lost." The people listened, their faces alight with hope. Ethan felt the truth of her words burn within him. He knew the path would not be easy. Storms lay ahead, battles yet to come, doubts that would rise again. But he also knew that together, they had the strength to face it. After the gathering, Elara led Ethan to the balcony above the city. The night sky stretched wide, filled with stars that seemed closer than ever. She stood beside him, her hands resting on the stone railing. "When I was a child," she said quietly, "I was shown a vision of a man who would come from the stars. I did not understand it then, but I believed. When I saw you, I knew." Ethan turned to her, his voice low but steady. You saw me before I ever knew you. Perhaps that was fate. But what matters is what we do now. Ilara nodded. Then let us vow together. You and I will lead our people not in fear but in hope. We will guide them back to the place we came from. And when we stand upon that soil again, it will not be as strangers, but as family. Their hands joined, a silent promise sealed beneath the stars. No throne, no crown, no weapon could hold more power than that vow. For in that moment, two paths became one, and the future of their people was no longer uncertain. Ethan looked out at the endless sky, his heart steady. He had arrived here by chance, through storm and trial, yet he knew it was never truly chance. It was purpose. And now, beside the queen, who had seen him long before he saw himself, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey was not ending, it was only beginning.